Hello, and welcome to Behind the Confident Smile. I'm your host, Bianca Cotton. I'm thrilled to be here with you for a conversation that delves into the deeply personal and often overlooked aspects of infertility. Today, we are privileged to have three remarkable women, Sara, Brandi, and Erica, who have generously agreed to share their unique journeys with us. A warm thank you to each of you for being here today. Infertility is a topic that touches the lives of many, yet is often veiled in silence. The National Institutes of Health defines infertility as a challenging road where women aged 15 to 44 face the inability to conceive after a year of actively trying, and for men, the struggle to impregnate a woman. The NHI also recognizes that women who become pregnant but cannot carry a pregnancy to term may also be considered infertile. In today's episode, we will explore the nuances of infertility, unraveling the emotional, physical, and societal layers that accompany this journey. Join us as we navigate through these powerful narratives and elevate the voices of Sara, Brandi, and Erica. Thank you for being a crucial part of today's conversation.
Thank you.
Welcome. How you doing today?
Good.
Awesome. So when you think back to maybe childhood or teenagehood, did you hear the word infertility?
No, I don't remember hearing it when I was younger. I knew a lot of people who had a lot of kids, so.
No, I never heard about it growing up.
I did. I don't know if that was because I watched too many soap operas with my family, but I knew about it, but didn't recognize how it existed in the Black community.
So at what point did you all gain an understanding of what infertility meant?
I think for me, when I experienced that's what it was, that's what I found out what infertility was. It just kind of was like, whoa. This exists, so.
Yeah, I would have to say the same. My mom was a teen mom, and so there was a lot of slut shaming. There was a lot of expectation that there would be certain tendencies in me that, was, I guess, a part of my mom's past that was kind of put on me. And so I had this idea in my mind, if I were ever to do that, the second I do it, I'm going to have a baby. And so it wasn't until I was diagnosed, really, that I think that I knew or had even conversations around that for the first time.
I think I was pretty aware of it even before I finished grade school, just because I was curious about people and relationships and kids. And I ended up doing volunteer work around HIV/AIDS by the time I got to high school. And so just by the nature of what I was doing, I was aware of infertility in children, but not that it was 1 in 4, 1 in 8, 1 in whatever it may be. I was unaware that it was so common. It was more of this kind of hushed conversation. Yeah, there are some people who are infertile, but that's not you. That's not us. That's for them.
Erica, you mentioned you didn't know what infertility was until you were told you were infertile. So was that a medical diagnosis that was given to you?
The doctor literally told me I was infertile, and I might as well take my fallopian tubes and get rid of them because I couldn't have kids.
What about for you, Sara? A medical diagnosis, and when we come back to you, Erica, how was that explained to you? Was that the only way that was explained? You should take out your
They kind of it's interesting. So when you first go through the fertility process, they're like, okay, well, cool. We're going to give you this progesterone. We're going to get your body right. Then they start giving you some people get Clomid, some people get other type of medicine, and you're on it. Sometimes they say, oh, you take this for a year and then we'll see where we're going. But, from my experience, the first doctor I had, he did a few tests, We did the histosalpingogram to see if my fallopian tubes would go through the dye. They didn't even make it through the entryway. I remember laying on the bed and the doctor told me, he said, this doesn't hurt. You know, you can lay there and we can get this over with. And so when I had the next doctor's appointment, the doctor who had been helping me, I want to say I don't even think he was helping me. We were in 3 months. He told me, you know, I should just, you know, have a hysterectomy because I can't have kids. I'm infertile. It's nothing he could do.
Wow.
It's just so frustrating to hear and really maddening to hear that was your experience. For me, I wanted to know what was going on because within, you know, in my mind, I'm like, when I'm really trying, it's going to happen. And so within the first year of trying, I had let them know that I was concerned around that. And then they typically, in order to have it logged, you wait like to show that that was a concern so that the year ahead, they have the evidence of you know, having unprotected sex for that year. And so there was no diagnosis apart from infertile, just for that reason alone. But there was just always a situation where there was a moving target, right? Like, it's this, oh no, it's this, it's that. So it could be hormonal. There were instances where I had issues with prolactin, my prolactin hormone being low. So they needed to do things with medication for that. I had issues with an ovarian torsion. I had a colon biopsy for abnormal cells. I had endometriosis. It was just something that
one after the other.
Issues with fibroids. There was just a lot going on, but no official, like, this is the thing. It was just a lot of things.
Mine was a medical diagnosis. So I have had problems with my cycle since I was a kid. But the reason was because, kind of like the moving target. One reason was because I was too active. Another reason was because I think I was a pound or two overweight. I was too active, then I was too active, and I was overweight by a couple of pounds. Then it was because sometimes this just happens. And then it was, don't worry about it, she'll grow out of it. When she's older, she's ready to have children, everything will be fine. There's a running joke with my husband and I. When he proposed, I said, ooh, he had like a real job. So I said, ooh, I get that real insurance. This is great. And I had finished grad school and hadn't had my health insurance. So as soon as we got married, I said, okay, it's time to go back and get your, physical done. There was a resident, my regular doctor wasn't there. And a resident said, I need you to come back in for your results. I was like, no big deal. She says, has anyone ever told you you have a condition called, at the time, premature ovarian failure, which is now called premature ovarian insufficiency? I was like, no. I was born at this hospital, and I had all my medical care at this hospital. I'm in like 25 by now. So I've been here for 25 years. And I've had problems since I was 13, 14. And I said, no, I don't know what that is. And so she explained what it is. And so she went through different symptoms, but she mentioned infertility. And then she mentioned if you ever want to have children, you probably will need to adopt or use a donor. I had been married 2 days. It may have been 3 months.
Wow.
And so the idea of infertility and the idea that the man that I married, I've known him since 8th grade. So the idea that we've had these conversations since we were children, about one day we'll be married.
Yeah.
Who thought that really would have happened? But it did. And then now to be told by some stranger that you have a condition that should have been diagnosed over a decade ago. Then my opportunities would have been different over a decade ago. And I don't know what she said. I always say she could have told me the key to life or said, hi, my name is Jesus. I'm here to save you. I would have never known because all I heard was infertile. I just got married. So yes, there was a diagnosis. And that's how I've kind of been on the roller coaster of infertility.
In that moment, Brandi, what did that feel like? Like, if you don't mind bringing us into that moment, I've been in the same medical institution for more than 2 decades, from doctor to doctor. Now a person that I've never met who is studying, right? Like they're studying.
Says, hey, by the way.
Picked up something that has never been told to me. How does that feel?
In the moment, honestly, I didn't really feel in the moment. It was more like she was telling me. It was like, what is that, the Peanuts character with the teacher, the wah-wah? So it really was a wah-wah-wah. She handed me a piece of paper from the Mayo Clinic, and it's a rare condition, right? And so she said, something, something, rare condition, something, something, infertility, something, something, eggs, something, 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 here you go. I said, oh, okay. And I remember walking to my car, and in my car, I was done. I'm sure if anyone saw me, they were like, is she okay? Full tears. I didn't kind of know what to do. I had to gather myself together, and I drove home. And then I just got in my bed because I'm like, I can't reconcile what she just told me with where I am and where I think I'm going and the plans that we had made, the plans I had made. And so it was a very traumatic experience. I don't think she could have been kinder, right? Because she was just saying, did anyone tell you this? Because she saw I had been there for 2 decades. So she really was like, well, it looks like no one ever told you. So she was actually filling in the gap from other people who just never told me, you know. And I had the doctors were some of the best doctors, pediatricians in the world. But then I think that also goes to, I don't think that the adult doctors and pediatricians talk. Because if the adult doctors could diagnose me, the reproductive endocrinologist, are you talking to the pediatricians when they get people like me? Because at 14, someone should have told me. I should need to be 18 to be told about a condition, but a pediatrician would know about it. The adult RE does. And so because there was no connection and no conversation, the person who's learning and is doing a residency every other place, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, let me tell you about this. And then even still, they had no treatment. They're like, well, we think that you're supposed to be on HRT. I'm 25. What does it look like for me to be on HRT until I reach 60? They're like, there are no studies about that. We don't know.
What would you all want to say to the medical professionals that you have engaged with on this journey? What would you want to tell them? And the medical professionals who are studying and in school, what would you want them to know? I know that's a twofold, and that's a big one. I know I opened up a can of worms here, but I really think it's something to be said. One, how information is presented to you, because this is your body and it's your life, and also even down to snarky remarks, right, that was said, like, oh, you might as well just throw them away. It's like, what would you want them to know?
I think the biggest thing is the first thing that I want to say is thank you. I'm an educator by profession. I know what it feels like to serve people. And you can be really desensitized when you're coming into so many experiences that can feel like a normal issue, and it's like, no, this is not normal, right? So for me, going through a lot of the issues that we did, I could tell when I was coming into contact with doctors, nurses, phlebotomists, whomever, that were very much so in tune with me and not desensitized. And so I would say thank you, and I would say, like, keep yourself in a space of empathy and human connection. And I don't know if that's even taught within the education, like the field of medicine. Maybe it's not. Maybe they're discouraged from doing that. And when it is, or if it is, it shows. It shows in the care that's received, and it is really difficult to convey just how that affects the body, this psychological experience that a woman goes through, and that can really hinder the healing process, I think, in being able to find yourself in a space where you're able to navigate through it well. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
For me, I'd probably say the fact that you're a patient, I'm the patient, and you're the doctor or practitioner partnering with me. Do the job of partnering with me. Even if the facts hurt, come with me with some kind of like what you said, the empathy, but also partner with me. Give me the information. Don't take my choice to choose whatever the decision or the path is. Don't tell me you may just have to adopt. It may be other options besides adoption, and give me hope. You're in a position as a doctor or a practitioner to empower me to take control of my health matters. That's why my insurance or my cash maybe is paying for your service, because I am trusting you to partner with me for my health. So that would be the thing for me, just to really partner, be sensitive. I do believe in that, doing to others as you want done to you, because you will reap what you sow. So it's like all of those things, just be mindful and do your research, because that is something else I've noticed. Depending on that zone of where their strength is in the medical field, like even when women do have children, some don't have enough information. If you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know. Let me find somebody else that is more knowledgeable to help. Don't just pre-diagnose and then you tell somebody to do something to find out that really wasn't the issue. It's kind of like, you ever seen the movie, the episode House, where they're spending all this time trying to figure out what's wrong. Well, let's go check this. Let's go check this. Let's go check this. Exhaust all costs to figure out what's wrong before you make a decision, because especially speaking with like all the medicines that's going on, a lot of them have after effects or effects that do more wear and tear on the body. Partner with me and advocate for me like you would want somebody to do it to you, or even your children for that matter.
So good.
Absolutely. I think I would tell them to be more compassionate, partner, and define what that means for me, because I think each patient is going to be different on what they need. Also, I think to learn how to be culturally competent. When I walk into an office and all I see are blonde white faces on the wall and blonde white faces at your desk, I'm not represented anywhere. So when I walk into this space, I can wonder, am I supposed to be here? When I walk into the fertility clinic and no one looks like me, when the wall of thank yous and babies are there and none of them look like me, are you for me? Do you understand me? And so it makes you wonder, you're already there, you don't want to be there. But then when you get there, it's not comfortable. And so the jokes, the bad disposition, the continuing to look for things that they know is not wrong. And then also understand that while insurance pays you, you still work for me.
That part.
And so I want you to treat me like your most precious loved one. You treat me and all your patients like that. Of course, there has to be some form of disassociation, right? You can't take that with you every day, but you can still have some compassion and some empathy. And if you have gotten to the space where you can no longer feel for the person sitting in the chair with you, then maybe you need to retire and find something else to do. Because then you end up with, just take your tubes out. Who says that? And then I have to question, if her name was Becky, would that have been the response?
Noted. Right? Noted. And it goes into a question that I have for you all, and I think you already answered it, is as a Black woman, right, when there's so many images and so much bias against Black women, like, oh, they're just super fertile and they can have a lot of children and it should be no issues with you getting pregnant, how it felt to know in that moment, I cannot carry a child. But I'm being told that I cannot carry a child. I am not represented in these pictures on the walls or on the table, or even depending on who your practitioner is. My practitioners do not look like me. How did that sit as a Black woman?
I was speaking with you a little bit in private about how I'm mixed, right? My mom is white, and I was raised in an all-white community. So my encounters with Black women were with my family a few times a year, maybe, right? If I got to see that side of my family. When I was older and I started having more personal connection with Black women, it was through church. And oftentimes those experiences filled me with a sense of strength and might. But at times I would have a lot of conversation where there were, I don't know, I don't know what to call them, but like, just maybe like faith statements that would put me in a state of doubt or confusion, even with like, why is this happening to me? So things that maybe were intended to be said in love, but just saying things like, baby, put some blessed oil on it. Like, eat you more yams, or it'll happen according to your faith, and fast and pray. And those things, I think, were absolutely, I mean, that is real for me. That was real for me, the faith component. But there were also instances, I think, for me as a Black woman, I don't pass for white, okay, so I'm Black. But as a Black woman, I think that I found myself wondering, like, is it something that God is upset with me about? I would hear people say, you're going through this to help somebody else. And I'd be like, well, he loved him more than he loved me,
Or did I have to be chosen?
Right.
Like, I didn't ask for this. I wasn't in that line.
I just think as a woman, it took the wind out of my sails, and honestly, I can look at it now and say, I needed women. I needed all women. I needed the students that I serve that are younger than me, that are sensitive and would just pick up on it and interact with me in their youthful stage of life. I needed older women that were courageous and brave enough to be able to connect with me on that level. I mean, I needed all women. And I think that, as a woman, it felt really good to be seen and connected to other women that, even if that wasn't their journey, they were courageous enough to extend their hearts to me in their way.
That's so good. It makes me now even more curious about, like, why do you all think that there's such a stigma attached to infertility, especially in the Black community amongst Black women, and the silence?
I think it's embarrassing, and I think we also kind of believe the hype. When we talk about how Black women are hyper-fertile, I think as a community we also believe the hype, right? The women who don't have children don't have them because they can't, or because they've had a loss. They don't have them because that's the rich auntie. They didn't want them. And so I don't think we've had the conversations. I say, my great grandmother had 13 living children. So somewhere in there were some losses. Were they stillborns? Were they miscarriages? I'm not sure, because no one talked about those. And so I think that there is shame around it. I think, we were talking earlier, and I don't think we as African Americans have been given the space to grieve. When our great grandparents were picking in the cotton fields, they didn't say, oh, you had a miscarriage, today you get a break. It was, there's a whole field over there for you to finish, right? And so when we have never been given the room and the space to properly grieve, we didn't get that benefit, we didn't get that blessing. We are then taught to continue to move forward. And we don't talk about those things. Kind of like, what is it? We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about those things, And so because we are strong, we found our strength wherever we got it from, and we are supposed to stand strong, because it could be worse. It used to be worse. You'll figure it out. And then because fertility is our fault, so when you pray about it, when you use the oil, when you eat the yams, take the Geritol, and you pray even harder because you've been faithful, God will deliver. Well, that's not how it works. And so then it becomes a battle, in my experience, between the reality, my faith, my friends and family, because you don't know about this until you're in it. And doing all those things doesn't help. And so what you're doing is you're coming to me and telling me I'm not faithful enough. That's not true, because you don't know my walk with God. I do. And so sometimes I think it's also we don't want to get into those conversations.
Yeah.
Because then you're really attacking the foundation of Blackness, God. And so if you come from a very spiritual, religious background, when you ask the question to your loved one, you can't say that about God. I didn't say it about God. I'm talking about me. And I want to have a conversation about me. And those can be very scary spaces to be.
I think another thing is that it's the information. I think knowledge is power. And I think because the culture hasn't been doing a lot of research until recently, I think we're having more conversation about infertility. I think that was something we didn't talk about, because if you look at history, even outside the Black community, in biology, when something went wrong with the woman's fertile areas, they automatically gave them a hysterectomy. That was just the answer for everything in culture in previous time. And I think it's been passed down in a way where we don't think that there's a solution sometimes. And some people don't feel empowered enough to do research on their own bodies. We just accept the diagnosis. And then, like you said, some people suppress it. We have coping mechanisms. We're going to be the rich auntie. And I feel like, again, like it just has everything to do with that shame thing. But the information, I feel like, plays a big part too, because if I tell you and you don't have any answers except God gonna fix it, then, are you gonna help me research? What are you gonna do? How do you walk with me? And it's the safe places. Some people don't know how to create a safe place when they are fertile. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like when a person dies, you don't want them to come over and eat your food and be like, we partying, it's the turn up. Sometimes you just want them to sit there and be, so I think that plays a part too. Some people don't know how to be there.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on the next In the Arena, author, speaker, change agent, and host of the CAN TV original program Behind the Confident Smile, Bianca Cotton.
I'm inspiring women and girls to walk in love, live in hope, and be healed from past hurts.
Tuesday at 7 o'clock on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
So we're going to go there. We're going to go there. Starting with you, Sara. You and your husband tried IVF for years and experienced several miscarriages and had a stillbirth not too long ago before conceiving your son, who is now 5 months old now, and carrying him to full term, but now 11 years later. Of your journey. How would you describe your journey of thinking if you will ever have a child?
How would I describe it? I don't have words. I mean, pretty much all the bad words that you can think of. It's that.
Explicative.
Yes, all the words, okay? Like all those words. I felt hopeless. In the beginning, I actually felt very like, oh, watch this, like watch God work. I did a lot of things holistic. You name it, I did it, right? I did like raw foods diet. I was vegetarian and vegan and did a lot of different things to partner with my body and regulate my hormones. And then after doing that for about 5 years, I was like, okay, the doctors had pretty much let me know, you can keep doing that. You can keep that same energy. But at this point, the next step would be IVF. And I really prayed about that and had an internal war about whether I should do that or not. Was also told that my fallopian tubes were closed. It felt like there was a grim possibility that it wouldn't happen. And I believe that God is sovereign. So I don't look for him to just give me my way because I want something, right? Like I understand that it may mean me accepting something in an experience that I have with him, and learning him in a way and his beauty and his greatness that may look different than what I'm expecting for it to look. The hardest part, honestly, were the losses. We got pregnant every time. We had 9 miscarriages, and then the stillbirth, and the timing of it was just hard. Because at that point in time, I want to say I had 4 losses. And then we had gotten pregnant, and every month that was going by, I just was like, is this really real? Okay, this is happening. It was we found out before Christmas, and then we went and okay, we can tell the world on New Year's, and then, which was kind of early to tell, but still, I was so excited. And then we got to our February and our March and our April, and on Mother's Day was when we lost our son. And when I tell you just the encounter from the reception desk in trying to ensure that I didn't lose my composure to be seen, it was during the pandemic, so that was another thing. But then after the stillbirth, and I didn't even know that I had to deliver, right? I don't know what I was thinking I was gonna have to do, but I didn't know that was gonna be a factor. And so after we went through all of that and I got back into IVF, we had 5 losses to follow to our last embryo. I mean, we lost everything. And so I changed my approach, for lack of a better word, in the sense of understanding that this is something that may not be. And yet, there was another part of me that's I think I want a second opinion still. And so even in doing that, I didn't even know that I was already pregnant, and I have nothing to say as far as it was this thing, right? There were so many variables. So a lot of the time people say things like, see, you just needed to stop putting your faith in science and then it would happen. And I'm like, what? Do you know how many things they was doing to help regulate my body all them years? You know what I mean? Ain't no way. There were a lot of things, I'm sure,
helpful
that helped, right? Helped a lot in doing what needed to be done. And yet I don't know. I have nothing, but I can say that it was hard and still is in a way, right? Because even though we have this beautiful baby, the haunting experience of that did not just melt away and disappear.
Correct.
Right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you managing the grief, right? And the years of loss, while living with the newborn? What?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think I managed in the sense of, I honestly, and I'd said this for the first time when we were actually at our shower, I felt like apologizing to everyone. And I'm sure that people were looking at me like, girl, what are you saying? But I felt like apologizing to everyone because I know I missed out on a lot over those years. Birthdays, I missed other people's showers. I was there as much as I could be, and at times I felt like it made me look crazy and like a flake, and it was complete disappointment. And so I felt like apologizing, but also acknowledging how I learned about grief from a few people. My aunt, who took care of me when she was in her young 30s, she lost her dad, and she tried to be so okay for us as a mother figure. And I never realized until my adult life just what that probably took for her. A friend of mine who lost her husband, I watched her worship and just saturate herself in music at all times, and how that had to do something to her mind to keep it above water, right? And then my husband, who buried his mom, and just this person that had gone through a loss where you would expect in a more traditional setting that it would be that would happen when he was older in age, right? But he was young when he lost his mom. And so I learned from watching other people go through grief, but I think more than anything, it was just not wanting to die myself, right? Like there were instances where I was scared that I was that low. Like the sun would be out, it would be gorgeous and beautiful, and I'm all things about sunshine and warmth. And just the like, what is going on in my mind right now, right? Like, Sara, you do want to live, right? Like you're not going to measure your life by the anguish of this time. It's just working towards, what are my thoughts saying? What are these thoughts really like connected to? Are they my thoughts? Are they suggestive thoughts? And filtering those things, because at the end of the day, I mean, like for women that go through loss or not being able to conceive, your life is not valued solely by that and measured in its value solely by that. And so just that reminder, I think, was a help.
Thank you for sharing all of that and the very realness of my struggle isn't over. Really, right? Like the mental and emotional piece, I'm still putting back together is what I hear from you.
Yeah.
And yes, you see my beautiful son. He is so cute. I'll be watching the videos. But there's a mom and a dad who is still recovering. And for us to remember as those in a part of the community, right, to remember to check in and say, hey, how are you doing? How are you really doing? Especially in a time where Mother's Day is approaching, right? Like that may be a day, a triggering moment for you, right? So it's us in the community making sure that we don't forget to check in, which I think is helpful, right? So for you, Brandi, you and your husband are going the donor egg route. And in previous conversations, we've talked about that, and you have educated me beyond what you even know. It's like, oh, I just learned something new. I feel like I got a new book I need to read. How did you learn about the path of going the donor egg route and even like the cost that's associated with that? Bring us into your world.
So I learned about donor egg from the resident. So the resident who said, hey, did you know that you had this condition? She mentioned donor egg as an option for starting the family because I don't have any children, nor do my husband. And so I went into the whole, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm standing 10 toes down in this, watch this. We've been married almost 18 years and we still watching for the thing to happen. So clearly it did not work. And so when I came out of my watch this phase, I went into a deep depression phase because nothing had worked. And then I came out of it like, well, we still want children. And so then I did the information, then I did the research to look into see what that would look like. And so through various organizations, which I know we'll talk about later, but through various organizations that were there for me, I was able to really talk to other people who had experienced this. And so I found out it's not cheap.
Oh, no.
It's not cheap. I thought we have very good insurance, and I thought we're okay. But the insurance covers medical treatments, not the procurement of the genetics. So the procurement of the egg that we need. That would be, depending on the agency, about $30,000. Last time I checked, there's no money tree in our backyard. And so life is lifing. We have mortgages and bills and things. We don't just have 30 grand in liquid assets sitting somewhere to give to an agency. That has nothing to do with medication, nothing to do with anything. That's just paying the agency for access to the donor for her to be able to go through the process to retrieve her eggs. Then we still have to pay for everything else. Pay for her retrieval, pay for her medication. If she doesn't live here, pay for her travel, pay for her companion's travel, pay for miscellaneous, pay for her insurance, pay. Well, hold on a second. And so, again, we are fortunate to have insurance that covers the medical piece because everyone doesn't have that. But we couldn't afford the procurement piece. So it's been years of applying for grants, saving money, emergency fund building, but then life happens. When your car breaks down, the money to go towards the eggs has to go to fix the car. Now you're back at square one. So the research helped me figure out how much it's going to cost. But then even going back to a question earlier, when I walk into your space and your donor bank has no one who looks like me, I don't feel like I belong here again, right? And so I need to then find these other agencies outside of where I am to be able to procure the eggs. So it's been an interesting journey. Again, it has its ups, it has its downs, and we're still in it. You know, we hope that this year the plan is to be able to afford a donor agency that I found out about last year that has much more of a feasible payment arrangement, and they seem to fit more into how I want to move forward in using a donor. Because using a donor, you can use an anonymous donor, you can use a known donor. Anonymity is not what I feel comfortable with, because I do feel that people have the right to understand and know their genetics. And by using an anonymous donor, it's more difficult. People do what they feel they have to do. But for me, myself and my husband, we want them to be able to know, to have access easily to that genetics. Meaning that if they woke up at 10 and said, hey, I have a question for my donor, they can reach out to their donor and ask those questions. Versus some spaces will do open ID at 18, meaning that they get their donor's information at 18. But why is it that we have to wait until they're 18 when they have questions at 10, 5? And so part of the journey is also coming to terms with an open, not relationship, but just open information. Because we believe that our child or children should have access to that when they want to, not when some arbitrary group says they should.
Curious about how you have been managing your mental health through 18 years.
I am crazy as Bessie. I'm already like this wandering spirit. My family's like, where did you come from? And so I believe in therapy. You know, I think that therapy is kind of like Goldilocks. You have to really find the right person.
Agreed.
And I'm not a very like emotional, touchy person. So getting a therapist who's like, oh, I'm going to touch you. No. Oh, let's talk about this. No, that's not going to work, right? I need someone who says, hey, today, did you shower? Let's talk about moving you forward. Did you journal today? Did you do these things? I need a therapist who's going to really challenge me. And so it was really important for me to find a therapist who did that. Also having a community of people who look like me and who don't. Because when it comes to infertility and grief, it has no boundaries, right? But I do believe finding people who look like me, they were able to understand some things without me having to say anything. I don't want to have to always explain myself. When I say, oh, I walked to an office today, that wall, other people don't understand that. But in my room with people who look like me, they say, yeah, girl, that was me too. And so there's a hominess to it. And so for me, therapy, being open as much as I can, because I do think that in a way, the trauma and the experiences that we do have, it's not always a lesson for us, but could also be lessons for other people. So I do believe that. Yeah. But again, I didn't stand in that line. I didn't mean to be over there, but I got it, right? And so being able to share that with other people, and then for them to be able to say, I thought it was just me. You know, I didn't do something because I heard you. And because you were open enough to share, I didn't go down that dark road. And now I know that I can go talk to someone. I know that it's not just me. I know that I am not alone. Makes me say, well, I didn't ask for this, but I'm happy that I was able to help someone else. So therapy, support in other spaces, and knowing that I am being of service and help to other people also helps. But I know that I'm also a little touched. So the craziness in here also helps me get through, because I figure out what works for me in the moment. You know, what works for me today may not be what works for me tomorrow.
Yes, Brandi. Erica. I know. Just go ahead and get the giggles out. What was your experience with remaining silent about not being able to conceive a child, even though that was the expectation in marriage? So I also want to put context around your question a little bit, because you disclosed this to us that you've been married 3 times.
Right. I got it right the 3rd time.
Right. So I'm talking about in the first marriage.
Yeah. So it's kind of like what Sara was saying, like, and even what Brandi was saying, like, you have this plan. Oh, I know that I got this together. I'm going to have 3 kids by 25 and everything's going to be all right. Mm-hmm. And you go to the doctor and then you find out that that's not the case. I didn't see anybody in my community at all that had infertility issues. I feel like I was blessed that while I was going through my infertility, I met my lawyer, who just so happened that his wife was going through infertility, and I think they had been going through it for like almost 20 years. And we were sharing stories. I was telling him what was going on with the doctors, and he was encouraging me. I had never talked to his wife yet at all. And he told me about a group that his wife was in. And I joined the group. Originally, that group was in the baby center. I didn't get on Facebook until I got pregnant with my daughter. But it was a group in baby center, and I noticed that these were all like kind of well-off women that were not my color at all, just sharing information. And it was able for me to kind of like have a safe place to talk to them. But then, you know, at this time when I was going through infertility, I was like, I was serving in youth ministry at church, and like everybody around me were having kids. So it's like, how do you talk to somebody who's breeding at rapid rates, and I'm just trying to have one? And I didn't feel like they could relate. So why share something with them? And then I think a lot of it had to do with shame too, because I didn't want somebody to see me as weak. Mm-hmm. And then I think I was having a lot of internal battles, and I think that goes to what you were saying about us suppressing stuff. You know, you have your faith like, oh, I'll have a testimony on this, so I don't have to tell it yet. I can wait. But then I'm suffering in silence and I'm bleeding. And you don't really pay attention to the fact that I'm bleeding in this one area, and subconsciously it's spilling in other areas of my life. Like, I didn't have a hernia until I had laparoscopy, because they did a botched job in putting me together. So, you know, it wasn't until I joined, took my power back and joined those community groups, and not being afraid to type. Because, you know, sometimes you got those community groups and you don't want to show your face, so that just in case somebody in the room. Right. And so, you know, it was like, I think for me, even joining the first group that I joined was that I was taking my power back. But, you know, that silence was primarily because I've never seen, and I don't, it's the Black community, but I would want to say like certain social classes, honestly, don't talk about infertility, because the myth is we don't have the money to fix the problem. So whatever the problem is, you just got to deal with it. Like, I didn't find out until I joined community groups that depending on what state you live in, you can get insurance, kind of like what you were saying, for X, Y, and Z, you know, or even like I found out through that community group about surrogates, you know, what you want to look for in a surrogate, you know. I learned about IVF, all this. So it empowered me in those community groups to go to my doctor and say, this is what I want to do. This is what I need done. Can you do this for me? And when they wasn't trying to comply, you're not the person for me, because I then went to this community group who then gave me information based off their own trials that kind of like gave me the fuel to be like, okay, so it might be possible. It may take longer, but it might be possible. And I could share with them like, it didn't work. I didn't get pregnant. You know, what is polycystic ovary syndrome? What is the difference between that and endometriosis? Because in my opinion, they like kissing cousins for some reason. They like super close. You know, I didn't know that because you don't have a period every month that all of this stuff is happening. It's like, that's why I feel like it's so important to have those groups, because the silence makes your mind kind of like, it's you know how they say it's ministering to you, but that's what it's doing. It's entertaining this thought that you can't. It's impossible. And nobody's giving you hope or solution that it can be possible.
Oh, as we wrap up this beautifully enlightening, painful, insightful conversation about real life, right? Just real life, sitting in my grandmama's kitchen, like I told y'all earlier, right? Support. What supports are in place for women who are experiencing infertility? There were a bit shared here, but if you all could direct women and families in a certain direction, what would that be?
I'm all about social media, because that has been one of my safe spaces. So my very first group was FFCG, called Fertility for Colored Girls. I am part of a white group, a Christian white group called Wives United in Prayer. And the president said, "Hey, Brandi, I know what you're going through. There's a program happening at this address. You should go." It really was not even 5 minutes from where I worked. And so I walked into a room of nothing but people who look like us. The physicians look like us, everything. I have not left them since. That has been a space for myself and my husband to really get our feet wet in talking to people about how we feel and getting the information. Also, there's another group called Daughters of Hannah, and I'm missing one, Black Women in Fertility. But one of the newer ones for me is Every Shade of Fertility, because that one is focused specifically on women of color using a donor of some sort, donor egg, donor sperm, and donor embryos. So for me, those spaces have been great, because although they are virtual, we can still connect tangibly in real life. You know, we meet up. I help run a support group. So there are different ways. If you want to stay typing, you can do that. But if you want to like move into the space and share air, you can also do that as well. So those have been really great spaces for me in terms of women of color.
Thank you for sharing. Sara?
I found myself really reluctant to getting connected more publicly to all the different supports that were out there. And I may have missed out on some really good opportunities to have been able to have, you know, gotten some support in those areas. For me, it was human connection with the people that were courageous enough in my proximity to talk to me about it. And that ended up being sufficient for me. I had women that I didn't even know through my job that were coworkers that had gone through IVF that literally brought me in their room, and they were like, "These are the vials, draw it up. Like, this is like, what are you gonna do? Like, this is the medicine that goes with this, that goes with this. You're gonna need to take out, you know, this amount from this vial, and this many times a day," right? And just kind of making the reality of like, okay, that's how that functions. So people that were willing to be open about their journey was a big support. Therapy, and I'm thankful that you made mention of that, because I did not go without therapy to get through that process. But for me, it was people that were willing to talk about it, and again, it didn't have to be those that empathized with the journey directly through that loss experience or the IVF experience. It was just those that were willing to see me in my state and know how to be.
Yeah. Just be. I think for me, I'm gonna give it from two perspectives. For me, the baby center was great because at that time I didn't know of any other groups to kind of lean on. I would say the Facebook groups, you know, are really good. I'm not part of any Facebook groups, but I've heard people that I've walked with during this time that are a part of a few groups. I totally agree with what Sara was saying. Like, even if a person hasn't gone through it, creating that hedge of community to speak to your situation, you know, whether you naturally conceive IVF or whatever, but have those people who walk with you and are willing to be like a voice, not even a voice, but just to hear you, you know, to pray with you, you know, because I'm a firm believer you need intercessors in every part of your walk. And then, like, I think therapy is good, but like just really, even if you have to create your community, because you may not know what you need in that season, and even through every trial of your fertility journey, you may need a different type of person. You may have started off where this you missed, because you know there are times when women miss. You know, you may miss the medicine you're supposed to take, or you miss your injection. That is a big thing. Use discernment in who you speak to. Yeah. Be mindful of them too, because from both lenses, sometimes you can be inconsiderate of people because you're going through. So it's kind of like you want to make sure that you're protecting your space, but you also want to make sure that you're giving yourself grace.
Erica, Sara, Brandi, thank you so much for the conversation today, the richness, the open heart, the grief shared, the challenges shared, and the beauty and the brokenness that's been shared. We didn't get a chance to get to talking about your spouses and how they felt in this journey, but I don't want to go without thanking them too. For agreeing for you to be here, right? Because this is a family affair. And so thank you, husbands who are watching. And for those who are experiencing infertility, know that you are not alone, and this conversation was for you. So thank you for tuning in. And for those who are family members and friends of those who are experiencing infertility, please share.